I worked for 50 Cent during the height of his power. I saw everything. The money, the fame, the secrets that never leave those rooms. But one night, after everyone else had gone home, 50 pulled me aside with a look I had never seen before. Pure fear. He was drunk, shaking, and he said something that still haunts me. The real Eminem never made it out. And I thought he was messing with me. He was not. What he told me that night about Marshall Mathers, about what happened in 2003, about what has been wearing his face ever since, it destroyed everything I thought I knew. I got the call in early 2005, an assistant position with 50 Cent right when he was untouchable. Get rich or die trying had made him a god. The massacre had just dropped. G-Unit was printing money. Curtis Jackson was not just a rapper anymore. He was an empire. And somehow, through a connection I still do not fully understand, I was being pulled into his inner circle. The first 3 months felt like a fever dream. Private jets to Vegas. Studio sessions that cost more per hour than most people make in a month. Watching 50 conduct business with a quiet intensity that made grown men nervous. He was sharp, calculated, always 3 steps ahead. But what struck me most was how he carried himself around other celebrities. He had this way of watching people, reading them like he could see past whatever mask they were wearing. Eminem was around a lot during those early days. Of course he was. This was 50's mentor, his biggest advocate, the man who had signed him and changed his life. They were supposed to be brothers, best friends. The media sold that story, and I had no reason to doubt it. But from the very first time I met Marshall Mathers, something felt wrong. It was at a studio in Detroit. We had flown in for a recording session, some collaboration that the label was pushing hard. I was handling logistics, making sure everything ran smoothly, staying invisible the way good assistants do. Walked in late, wearing a black hoodie pulled low, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Not literally, but energetically. Everyone got quieter, more careful. 50 greeted him with a hug, all smiles, calling him by some nickname I could not quite hear. But I was watching 50's eyes, and for just a split second, I saw something flicker across his face. Hesitation. Maybe sadness. It vanished so fast I thought I had imagined it. Eminem barely acknowledged anyone else. He moved through the space like he was sleepwalking, going through motions he had performed 1,000 times. When he finally looked at me, just a passing glance, I felt my stomach turn. His eyes were empty, not tired, not bored, empty, like looking into 2 holes where a person should be. I shook it off, told myself he was just focused, just in work mode, just being the perfectionist everyone said he was. But over the following weeks, I kept noticing things. He would zone out mid-conversation. Someone would be talking directly to him, and he would stare past them, face blank, until something snapped him back. Then he would respond like nothing had happened, but his answer would not quite fit what had been said. Close enough that most people would not notice, but off. 50 would tell stories about their come-up, about the early days, about specific moments they had shared. Eminem would nod along, laugh at the right times. But he never added details, never corrected anything, never said, "Nah, man, remember, it was actually like this." He just agreed, like someone who had been briefed on these stories but had not actually lived them. There were physical things too. I have been around enough celebrities to know that fame changes people, makes them exhausted, makes them guarded. But Eminem moved wrong. Too precise, too controlled. Like his body was a machine he was operating rather than something he inhabited naturally. He never seemed uncomfortable, never shifted his weight or scratched an itch or did any of those unconscious human things. He would sit perfectly still for disturbing lengths of time. And he did not eat. I never saw him eat. Not once. We would have catering at sessions, elaborate spreads, and everyone would pick at food between takes. Eminem would hold a bottle of water. That was it. For hours. Sometimes he would bring it to his lips, but I am not even sure he drank. The worst part was watching 50 watch him. When Eminem was not looking, 50's face would go dark, haunted. He studied him the way you would study a stranger wearing a loved one's clothes. I caught him doing it dozens of times over those months. This look of profound grief mixed with something that seemed like dread. Once, after Eminem left a session early, I saw 50 standing alone in the hallway, staring at nothing. I asked if he was all right. He turned to me with red eyes and said, "You ever lose somebody but still have to see them every day?" Before I could ask what he meant, he walked away. I thought he was talking about a breakup or some beef, maybe tension in their friendship. I had no idea what he actually meant, but I was about to find out. It happened on a Tuesday in August. I remember because it was the anniversary of something, some label milestone. And there had been celebrations earlier that day. By midnight, the studio had cleared out. Engineers gone, hangers-on gone. Just me finishing up paperwork in the lounge while 50 sat in the main room, headphones off, staring at the mixing board. He had been drinking, heavily. That alone was unusual. Curtis Jackson was disciplined about everything, including alcohol. But that night, he had gone through half a bottle of Hennessy, and when I walked in to ask if he needed anything before I left, he looked at me like he had been waiting for someone to talk to. "Anyone? You believe in ghosts?" he asked. I laughed nervously. Told him I did not know. Maybe. Why? He poured another drink with shaking hands. "Not like Halloween. Ghosts. Something that should not be here anymore but is. Something that is walking around, talking, living a whole life. But the person it used to be is gone." I sat down slowly. His tone was scaring me. This was not philosophical rambling. This was confession. "Marshall was here earlier," he continued, not looking at me. "Did you see him?" I nodded. Eminem had stopped by for maybe 20 minutes, barely said a word, then left. "He didn't remember," 50 said quietly. "I brought up this thing we did back in '03, right before everything blew up for me. We were in this tiny studio in Queens, freestyling at like 4 in the morning, and he came up with this whole concept for a song we never recorded. It was this specific moment. We laughed so hard we could not breathe, one of the best nights of my life." He took a long drink. I mentioned it tonight. Thought it would make him smile, and he just looked at me like I was speaking another language. Then he said, "Yeah, man, that was crazy." But I could see it in his face. He had no idea what I was talking about. He was just agreeing to agree. The pain in 50's voice was overwhelming. I started to say something about memory being unreliable, about how maybe Marshall just forgot, but he cut me off. He's been doing that for years now, acting like he remembers things he does not, pretending to be someone he's not. 50 finally looked at me, and his eyes were wet. I need to tell someone. I need someone else to know this, because if something happens to me, if I end up dead or disappeared or whatever, somebody needs to understand why. My heart was pounding. You know what? He said it so simply. so matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. Marshall Mathers died in December 2003. I saw his body. I was there when they took him out of his house in a black bag. The real Eminem has been dead for over 20 years. The room tilted. I actually felt dizzy. I opened my mouth to argue, to call him crazy, to laugh it off as drunk talk, but the look on his face stopped me. This was not insanity. This was not a joke. This was a man telling the truth about something that had been destroying him. That is impossible, I finally managed. He's been putting out albums, touring. We just saw him tonight. I know, 50 said. I know how it sounds, but listen to me. Really listen. December 19th, 2003. I got a call at 2 a.m. from Paul, Marshall's manager. He was panicking, barely coherent. Told me to get to Detroit immediately. Would not say why over the phone. I chartered a plane. Flew straight there. When I got to Marshall's house, there were unmarked cars everywhere. Men in suits I did not recognize, and Paul, standing in the driveway, looking like his soul had left his body. 50 paused, poured another drink, downed it. They let me inside, upstairs, bathroom, and there he was, Marshall, my brother, face down, blue, gone, overdose, pills everywhere. He had been dead for hours. I could not breathe, could not process what I was hearing. I held him, 50 continued, voice breaking. I held my friend's body, and I cried like I have never cried in my life. And while I was there, while I was saying goodbye, these men, label executives, lawyers, people I had never met, they were already on their phones, already making calls, already planning how to cover it up. He looked at me with absolute desperation. Do you understand what I am telling you? I buried Marshall Mathers. Whatever has been walking around using his name, making music, showing up to studios, that is not him. The question came out as a whisper. Then what is it? 50 leaned back, closed his eyes. That is what I have been trying to figure out for 20 years. And the answer is so much worse than you think. I should have walked out. Any rational person would have. But 50 was already standing up, moving toward a safe built into the studio wall that I had never noticed before. He entered. A code with trembling fingers. And when the door swung open, he pulled out a thick manila folder stuffed with documents. I have been collecting this for years, he said, dropping it on the table between us. Every piece of evidence I could find. Every record they thought they buried. Because I knew eventually I would need to show someone. I knew I could not keep this inside forever. He opened the folder and spread papers across the surface. My hands were shaking as I reached for the first document. It was a death certificate. Official State of Michigan seal. Name, Marshall Bruce Mathers III. Date of death, December 19th, 2003. Cause, acute polypharmacy toxicity. Time, estimated between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. There was a medical examiner's signature at the bottom. Dr. Lawrence Whitman. That is real, 50 said. Certified, filed, then sealed within 48 hours by court order. Someone with serious power made that document disappear from public record. I stared at the certificate, my brain refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. How did you get this? The examiner's assistant, he kept a copy. Felt wrong about the whole thing. Took me 3 years and $100,000 to track him down and convince him to give it to me. He died 6 months later. Car accident, single vehicle. Drove off a bridge. 50's voice was flat. You can look it up. Dr. Whitman's assistant. His name was Robert Chen. The next document was a coroner's report. clinical, detailed. It described the state of Marshall's body when it was found, lividity patterns, rigor mortis, stomach contents, time of death estimation. Every medical detail that confirmed a human being had stopped living. But there was a note scrawled in the margin in a different handwriting. Examination terminated early per external directive. Body released to private facility. Standard autopsy protocols not completed. They rushed it, 50 explained. Got him out of the official system as fast as possible. That private facility? It does not exist. I have tried to track it down. The address on the transfer papers is an empty lot in Dearborn. I flipped through more pages. Photographs. My stomach lurched. They were surveillance-style shots, grainy, taken from a distance with a long lens. They showed a Detroit residential street, a house I recognized from MTV Cribs, Marshall's house, and in one photo, clear as day, a body bag being loaded into an unmarked van. The timestamp read, December 19th, 2003. 4:47 a.m. Who took these, I asked. Someone who was watching. I do not know who. These were delivered to me anonymously in 2007. No return address, just a note that said, "You are not crazy." He's gone. There were financial records next, bank statements, wire transfers, payments made from Interscope, from shady records, from parent companies I did not recognize. Huge sums, millions, paid to individuals whose names were redacted, dates ranging from December 2003 through early 2004. Hush money, 50 said. Everyone who was there that night got paid. Paramedics, police, the medical examiner, Paul, even the neighbor who probably heard something. They bought silence from everyone. Why? The question felt stupid, even as I asked it. Why cover it up? If he died, why not just, announce it? 50 laughed bitterly. You know how much money Marshall Mathers was worth to these people? Not the man, the brand, the artist. Eminem was the biggest rapper on the planet. Albums selling 10 million copies. Movies in production, endorsements, merchandise. His next album was already being promoted. The label had hundreds of millions invested in him. And he was white, which meant he was bringing in demographics nobody else could touch. He was irreplaceable. He pulled out another document. This one made my blood run cold. It was a non-disclosure agreement. Dated December 23rd, 2003. It included a clause that read, "Signatory agrees to maintain absolute confidentiality regarding the medical emergency, subsequent death, and all related matters concerning Marshall Bruce Mathers III. Breach of this agreement will result in immediate legal action and forfeiture of all compensation." There were signature lines, 15 of them, all signed. Everyone who knew signed one of these, 50 said. I refused. Told them I would go to the press. They offered me $20 million. $20 million to keep my mouth shut about my best friend's death. His voice cracked. And you know what the real nightmare is? I did keep quiet. Not because of the money. I never took their blood money, but because by the time I was ready to talk, it was already too late. What do you mean? He looked at me with exhausted horror. Because by January 2004, Eminem was back. Doing interviews, recording, walking around like nothing had happened. And I could not figure out how. I thought maybe I had been wrong. Maybe he had not died. Maybe it was some kind of coma, or maybe I misunderstood what I saw. I wanted so badly to believe that. 50 gathered the papers slowly, carefully, like they were fragile. So I watched him, studied him, spent time with him, talked about old memories. And that is when I realized the truth. The thing using Marshall's body had his face, his voice, his mannerisms, but it was not him. The person inside was gone. He locked eyes with me. Something else is in there now. Something that has been pretending to be Marshall Mathers for over 2 decades, and I have spent every day since trying to understand what it is. I felt sick, truly sick, because despite how insane this all sounded, the evidence was real, tangible, undeniable. "What do you think happened?" I whispered. 50 closed the folder and put it back in the safe. When he turned around, his face was haunted. I have a theory, but once I tell you, there's no going back. You will see what I see, and trust me, you do not want that. But I had to know. God help me, I had to know. 50 poured himself another drink, but did not consume it. Just held the glass, staring into the amber liquid like he could see something there that I could not. Marshall created something. He began slowly. Slim Shady. That character, that persona. It was supposed to be just an artistic alter ego, you know? A way to say the things Marshall could not say as himself. A mask he could put on and take off. He set the glass down hard. But millions of people believed in Slim Shady. They bought the albums, memorized every word, dressed like him, talked like him, made him real in their minds. All that attention, all that energy, all that belief focused on a fictional character. What if that was enough? What if all those millions of people actually brought something into existence? I felt cold. You think Slim Shady became real? I think something heard all those voices calling out to it and decided to answer. I think Marshall opened a door with his music, his rage, his darkness, and something walked through. It wore the Slim Shady mask at first, but when Marshall died, it did not need the mask anymore. It had the whole body. This was insane, but I could not look away. 50 stood up and started pacing. The thing I have been watching for 20 years does not sleep. I have tested this. Called him at 3 in the morning, 4, 5. He always answers on the first ring, fully alert, like he has been awake the entire time. One time I showed up at his house at dawn unannounced. He answered the door immediately, fully dressed, not a hair out of place. No grogginess, no confusion, like he had been standing there waiting. My skin was crawling. People can have insomnia. For 20 straight years, every single night? 50 shook his head. I have watched him in the studio, freestyling for 6, 7 hours without stopping. No water breaks, no bathroom breaks. His breath control is not human anymore. He will rap for 40 minutes straight, complex rhyme schemes, never gasping, never pausing. I timed it once. 43 minutes of continuous flow without a single breath that I could detect. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then showed me a video. It was concert footage, backstage. Eminem standing alone in a hallway, completely motionless, not shifting weight, not blinking, not breathing visibly, just standing there like a statue for the entire 2-minute clip. This was in Dallas, 2009. I filmed it because I could not believe what I was seeing. See, watch his chest, watch his shoulders. There's no rise and fall, nothing. I watched it 3 times. He was right. No breath movement at all. His eyes are wrong too, 50 continued. You have noticed, right? Even if you did not want to admit it. They do not track properly. Sometimes he looks at you, but he is focused on something behind you or through you. And the color is different. Marshall had blue eyes, light blue, really distinctive. What is in his body now? The color shifts. Sometimes they are darker. Sometimes they are almost gray. I have seen them look black under certain lights. I thought about that first meeting, the empty quality of Eminem's gaze. I had dismissed it. Now it felt like a warning I had ignored. 50 was on a roll now, years of observation pouring out. He does not remember his own life correctly. Personal things, intimate things, his daughter's birthday. He got it wrong once in conversation with me. Just casually mentioned Haley's birthday is November 8th. It is December 25th. Her father would never forget that. But whatever is pretending to be him does not actually have his memories. It has information, data, but not the lived experience. He pulled up another photo on his phone, a candid shot of Eminem from a backstage area, 2011. In the image, his face was turned away from the camera but caught in a mirror's reflection. The reflection showed something wrong. The angle did not match. The expression was different, contorted into something that did not look human. I have dozens of photos like this, 50 said. Moments where the thing glitches, where whatever is controlling the body loses focus for a split second and something else shows through. Look at the neck in this one. You see that? I looked closer. There were dark lines on the neck in the reflection, like veins, but too pronounced, too geometric, almost like circuitry under the skin. It is wearing him, 50 whispered, wearing Marshall like a suit. And it is getting better at it over time, more convincing. But there are still moments where you can see the seams. He sat back down heavily. The worst part is the voice. Most people do not notice because they only hear him through speakers, through recordings. But when you're in a room with it, when you're close, you can hear something underneath. Like multiple voices speaking at once. Harmonics that should not be there. Once, during an argument about a contract, it got angry. Really angry. And for just a second, when it raised its voice, I heard something else. Something that sounded like thousands of people speaking in unison, all saying the same words. I realized I was gripping the armrest of my chair hard enough to hurt. Did Marshall know? Before he died, did he know something was inside him? 50's face crumpled. I think that is why he died. I think he killed himself trying to get it out. His overdose was not accidental. Marshall was not sloppy with pills. He knew what he was doing. I think he realized something had gotten into him. Something was taking over, and he tried to stop it the only way he could. He looked at me with devastation. But it didn't work. It did not need him alive anymore. It had already learned everything it needed. How to move, how to talk, how to be convincing. Marshall dying just gave it full control. The question I did not want to ask forced its way out. Is Marshall still in there? Still conscious? 50 closed his eyes. I pray he is not. I pray my friend is really gone. Really at peace. Because if he is still in there, still aware, still trapped inside his own body while something else controls it, his voice broke completely, that would be hell. Literal hell. Watching this thing live his life, interact with his children, make his music, unable to stop it, unable to scream, just watching forever. We sat in silence for a long time. Then 50 said the thing that made everything worse. And I am not the only one who has figured it out. 50 pulled a small black notebook from his jacket pocket. The leather was worn, the edges frayed from years of handling. He opened it carefully, like it contained something sacred or cursed. And I saw pages filled with handwritten names, dates, notes in tight script. This is everyone who figured it out, he said quietly. Everyone who got too close, who noticed what I noticed, who started asking the wrong questions. There are 17 names in here. Guess how many are still working in the industry? I could not answer. My throat had closed up. 3, he said. 3 out of 17. The rest are gone. Dead, disappeared, or destroyed in ways that made them wish they were dead. He turned to the first page. Mark Hendricks, recording engineer, worked on Encore. Started telling people that Eminem was different in the booth, that something about his voice had changed on a fundamental level. Said he ran audio analysis and found frequencies that should not exist in a human voice. Tried to present his findings to the label. 50 paused. Car accident, head-on collision on the I-94 in 2005. Police said he swerved into oncoming traffic. No explanation, no mechanical failure. He just drove into a semi-truck at full speed. My hands were shaking. 50 kept going. Teresa Walsh, journalist. She interviewed Eminem for Rolling Stone in 2006. Smart woman, really observant. She called me after the interview, spooked, said something was off. She had done her research, brought up specific details from his past, from interviews he did in the 90s. He could not remember any of it, not a single personal anecdote. He kept redirecting, deflecting, giving generic answers. She started digging, started looking into discrepancies in his biography. He flipped the page. Her apartment caught fire 3 weeks later. Electrical malfunction, they said. She barely made it out alive, lost everything. All her research, her notes, her recordings. When she tried to continue the story, her editor killed it. Said the sources were unreliable. She got blacklisted from every major publication. Last I heard, she was living in Montana, working at a coffee shop, too afraid to even talk about what happened. Name after name, tragedy after tragedy. A personal assistant who suffered a sudden mental breakdown and was committed to a psychiatric facility. A backup dancer who witnessed something during a rehearsal and tried to film it. His phone was confiscated and he was hospitalized the same night with what doctors called a psychotic break. A childhood friend of Marshall who started asking 50 questions about why Eminem did not recognize him anymore. Found dead in his Detroit apartment from an apparent suicide. Gunshot to the head. Ruled self-inflicted, even though his family swore he was not depressed. The pattern is clear, 50 said. Anyone who threatens to expose this, anyone who gets concrete evidence, anyone who pushes too hard, they get neutralized. Sometimes it is violent, sometimes it is subtle, but it always happens. He turned to a page with a name circled in red ink. David Chen. This one haunts me the most. Dave was a producer, worked with us back in '04. Brilliant guy. He figured it out faster than anyone. Spent months documenting everything. Behavior patterns, voice analysis, physiological impossibilities. He created this whole presentation, had medical experts lined up, audio forensics, everything. Was planning to go public. 50's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They found him in his studio. Doors locked from the inside, sitting at his mixing board. But his mind was gone. Completely gone. He was just empty, staring straight ahead, not responding to anything. No drugs in his system, no physical trauma. Brain scans showed normal activity, but whoever David Chen had been was just not there anymore. Where is he now? Facility upstate, still there. I visit sometimes, even though I know I should not. He just sits there. But once, just once, when I walked into his room, he turned his head and looked directly at me, and he whispered something. 3 words. 50's hands were trembling. He said, "It knows everything." The room felt smaller suddenly, suffocating. "What does that mean?" I asked, though I was terrified of the answer. "I think it means that thing inside Marshall is aware. Aware of everyone who knows the truth. Aware of everyone who is watching it. And it has ways of dealing with threats." 50 closed the notebook. "Some of these people were killed. Some were silenced through fear or force, but some of them were erased in ways that do not make physical sense. Ways that suggest whatever this entity is, it has capabilities beyond just inhabiting a body." He looked at me with exhausted desperation. "You are number 18 now. By telling you, I have put you in danger. Real danger. But I could not carry this alone anymore. I needed someone else to know, to witness, to understand that I am not insane." "Why have you not been touched?" I asked. If they know, why are you still here?" 50 laughed darkly. "Because I am valuable. Because I am famous enough that my death or disappearance would raise too many questions. And because," he hesitated, "because maybe it wants me alive. Wants me to watch. Wants me to suffer knowing my best friend is gone, and I can do nothing about it. That is the kind of cruelty I would expect from something that feeds on human darkness." He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. There was one more. One person who knew everything and tried to do something about it. Dr. Sarah Cohen, psychiatrist, specialized in dissociative disorders. She treated Marshall briefly in 2002 before everything went wrong. She reached out to me in 2008, said she had reviewed his old sessions and something was impossible about his current behavior. Said she wanted to examine him again, do a proper evaluation. 50 turned back to me. I begged her not to, told her it was too dangerous. She would not listen. Said she had a professional obligation, that if Marshall was suffering from some kind of neurological condition, she could help him. He paused. They found her in her office 2 days before the scheduled appointment. Suicide by prescription medication. Left a note apologizing for the stress she had been under. Everyone believed it, but you did not. Sarah Cohen was one of the most stable, well-adjusted people I ever met. She had a daughter she adored, a husband, a thriving practice, no history of depression or substance abuse. And her suicide note, it was typed. Sarah only ever wrote by hand. She said typing removed the personal connection that was essential to her work. He returned to his chair, suddenly looking decades older than he was. That is when I knew for certain. Whatever this thing is, it will kill to protect itself, or something will kill for it. I stopped trying to expose it after that. Started just surviving, documenting, waiting. Waiting for what? 50 met my eyes. For it to make a mistake, for the mask to slip too far, for someone with more power than me to notice. He leaned forward, or for it to finally decide it does not need the Eminem persona anymore. Because that is what terrifies me most. What happens when it is done pretending? The question hung in the air like smoke. But 50 was not done with his revelations. There is something else you need to understand. Something that makes all of this even worse. After that night, I could not stop seeing it. Every interview, every appearance, every piece of footage, I consumed it all with new eyes. And once you know what to look for, the evidence is everywhere. I started with old performances from 1999, 2000, the early years. Marshall was alive then. You could see it in the way he moved, loose and chaotic. Genuine rage and joy flickering across his face. His eyes were focused, present. He fed off the crowd's energy in a way that felt human and raw. Then I watched performances from 2004 onward. The difference was staggering. The movements became mechanical, perfectly choreographed but empty. The stage presence was there, but it felt rehearsed rather than felt. And his eyes, God, his eyes, they were dead. Scanning the audience without actually seeing anyone, going through motions that something had studied and replicated. I found interview footage from a late-night show in 2007. The host asked him about his daughters, some cute anecdote about family life. The thing wearing Marshall's face smiled, told a story that sounded plausible and warm, but I played it back frame by frame. Its pupils did not dilate when talking about his children. No physiological response at all. Just a flat, practiced performance of what fatherly love should look like. The worst was a documentary from 2010. There was a moment, just 3 seconds long, where the camera caught Eminem alone in a dressing room. He thought he was off camera. His face went completely slack, emotionless. Then his head tilted at an angle that was just slightly wrong, too far, like something was testing the range of motion. When someone entered the room, the personality snapped back instantly. Smile, nod, human again. I became obsessed. Sleep disappeared. I filled notebooks with observations, timestamps, inconsistencies. My apartment walls became covered with printouts and notes connected by red string like some conspiracy theorist. But I was not theorizing, I was documenting reality. Then I made the mistake of attending a studio session. 50 had invited me, probably regretting his confession, wanting to see if I could handle being around it now that I knew. I should have declined. The thing that called itself Eminem was already there when I arrived. It looked at me, really looked at me, and I knew with absolute certainty that it recognized me as someone who understood what it was. It smiled, but the smile did not reach its eyes, those dead, empty eyes that were watching me with something that resembled curiosity, like a predator studying prey. I lasted 15 minutes before I had to leave, made an excuse about feeling sick, rushed out of the building into the parking lot and vomited behind my car, because being in that room with it, knowing what it was, feeling it aware of my awareness, that was more terror than my body could process. I quit 2 days later. I met 50 one last time before I left the industry completely. A quiet bar in Manhattan, far from anyone who would recognize us. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the 2 weeks since his confession. Hollow, defeated. "You are leaving," he said. Not a question. I nodded, told him I could not be around it anymore. Could not pretend everything was normal. He understood. I wish I could leave too, but I am trapped. Too deep, too visible. It knows if I run, people will ask questions. So I stay. I smile. I make music with that thing and pretend my best friend is still alive. His voice broke on the last word. You were smart to get out fast. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes. You start doubting your own memories. Start wondering if maybe you imagined everything. That is how it keeps people quiet. Not through threats, through gaslighting reality itself. He slid something across the table. A burner phone. Keep this. Never turn it on unless you absolutely have to. If something happens to me, if I die suddenly, if I disappear, if I have some convenient accident, turn it on. There will be one contact in there. Send them everything I showed you. They will know what to do with it. I took the phone with shaking hands. Who are they? Someone who has been investigating this longer than either of us. Someone with resources. He stood to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Sometimes late at night, I get calls. Private number. When I answer, there is just breathing. Then a voice. Marshall's voice. The real one, screaming, begging for help. It only lasts a few seconds before the line goes dead. He looked at me with absolute horror. The real Eminem never made it out. He's still in there. Trapped. Aware. Watching this thing live his life. And there's nothing I can do to save him. That was the last real conversation we ever had. Years have passed since I walked away. I have tried to build a normal life, tried to forget. But you cannot forget something like that. And the universe will not let me. I still follow Eminem's career from a distance. Every album release fills me with dread. Every interview makes my skin crawl because I can see what others cannot. The way his movements have become even more refined, more perfectly human, like whatever inhabits him is learning, evolving, getting better at the performance. And 50 Cent? He has been distancing himself. Fewer collaborations, fewer public appearances together. Less reminiscing about the old days. Maybe he finally found a way to create separation. Or maybe he's just too exhausted to keep pretending. But here is what haunts me most. 3 months ago, I started receiving calls. Unknown numbers. Middle of the night. When I answer, there is breathing. Heavy, desperate breathing. Then a voice, distorted, agonized, barely recognizable, whispers my name. Just my name. Over and over. I think it is Marshall. The real Marshall. Still trapped inside his own body after more than 20 years. Still conscious. Still aware. Still screaming into the void. Hoping someone will hear him. So I am telling you now. I am breaking my silence because someone needs to know the truth. Marshall Mathers died in December 2003. What has been walking around since then? Making music, winning awards, living his life, that is something else. Something that wears his face like a mask. Something that should not exist. The real Eminem never made it out. And he is still in there. Still suffering. Still begging for someone to help him, but nobody can. Because the thing that took him is too powerful, too protected, too deeply embedded in our culture to ever be stopped. And it is still out there,